Welcome back, everyone, to the latest video. This one is via a donation from Mac from Rose Strong Kennels. I appreciate it, Mac. Thank you. What I'm going to talk about today is uh, basically, which lines dominated certain eras, then lost it. Why? And if you go back to the history of the breed, the first ones imported. Well, the first ones popularized probably were the English dogs, going back to Lloyd's Pilot. Then you have the Irish dogs like Lightner, Donovan, Semis, uh, people like that. Colby would be one of the main breeders from the past. Colby, Lightner, Feely, guys like that. Um, and Colby has outlasted probably any bloodline in history, meaning consistently bred over decades and decades. But every line either transforms to something else or is actually lost. So in the past, you would have some top breeders. Tudor would be considered a top competitor, a top dog man. He wasn't really considered a breeder, even though he was, and he used most of his dogs. The fact that he would acquire dogs from other people kind of lent to the fact that he wasn't a breeder per se, but he was. And he was from almost his inception into the dog breed. It's just that it wasn't until Daibo was around, not even in the days of Blackjack did they consider those Tudor dogs or a Tudor bloodline. Those were Henry dogs, or he made Colby crosses, or he used Lightner blood or Feely blood, like a lot of people did. And his concern wasn't really about making a name for himself in that sense. This is from my understanding, anyways. But it was to just have good dogs, breed good dogs, and compete. And he was the tops. Even Sadler, who wasn't known as a breeder, he bred some dogs. Not to the extent that Tudor did and a lot of other guys did. He was mostly known as a conditioner and handler. But most everybody will breed dogs. But the popular breeds, the popular bloodlines of their day, uh, generally meant that somebody bred a lot of them, and others acquired those dogs and used them for their own use, whether it was breeding or competing. So Colby was the main guy, I would say, for decades, going back to the late 1800s up until, you could say today, but like I said, every bloodline fades out. If they weren't consistently bred and used for competition, that's one way that they fade out, because then certain standards are not kept and the dogs lose a lot. Heavy inbreeding is another reason some bloodlines fade out. In their attempt to keep their blood pure and not trusting outside dogs or outside help, breeders will, you know, they'll be responsible for their own downfall, because they'll heavily inbreed and then lose the good attributes that they had. And most any breeder, to establish their own family of dogs, they use different bloodlines put together. Heinzelbub would be one like that. He used basically 5, if you want to call it, bloodlines to produce the Heinzel dogs, which was Leitner, Hemphill, Colby, Tudor, and Corvino. That's what makes up the Heinzel dogs, or made up the Heinzel dogs. And he would repeatedly, on a regular basis, go back to the Colby dogs. And so would Tudor. That Tudor Colby, Daibo Colby, Henry Colby, Heinzel Colby, Kobe, Leitner, because they were around for so long. A lot of people would either make Kobe dogs their foundation, whether it's a Bucky McCoy stuff, or use it as a consistent cross when they wanted outside blood. So through different eras, you have different what you would call uh, bloodlines that dominate, or at least were more popular. You know, if you want to say like beginning in the late in the 50s, 60s, 70s, like that, you had Carver, who would be a dominant breeder. You would have Heinzel on the tail end of his career, still producing dogs. You'd have Boudreaux with the Eli stuff coming onto the scene and starting to become more popular, and people wanting to acquire their dogs. Then you have the mix of Carver Eli. That's kind of a misnomer, because although they're two distinct families of dogs, Carver and Boudreaux, or Carver and Eli dogs, they have a lot of commonalities in their pedigrees, in the back of their pedigrees. A lot of it is Daibo stuff, or it's Kobe Leitner stuff, that Carver used, and that cross, Kobe Leitner or Kobe and Daibo, which is would be Kobe or Carver Eli. It's a very good, very potent cross or family of dogs. You know. Moving on, you get into you could say the Jeep dogs. You could say, the Jeep Red Boy. You could other examples would be Red Boy Jocko. You know, those around my time, a little after my times, same kind of time frame. You know, you have the Bolio dogs that were prevalent, and then their crosses. Then you have different bloodlines that were popular in their area, from the you would call the Southwest all the way to California, up the western coast into Oregon and Washington. You have the Bolio dogs. That's where most of them were, and most of them were bred from, and were heavy in that area, all the way from the west coast up into uh, Arizona, Nevada, even New Mexico and Texas to some degree. In the Oklahoma area, you have the Daibo dogs. Tombstone, Red Baby stuff, the Spike Black Widow stuff, heavy Daibo, Usselton, and Maloney dogs. Danny Burton was from there. All those Daibo dogs from Mayfield, who was from Texas. Those dogs were popular in some areas. In the Great Lakes area, you have the Kingfish Zebo art stuff, that was dominant there. You also have the Komasinski blood up there, all mixed in. Ozzie Stevens and those guys, Frank Bunce, and different people that used, uh, the Zebo blood, even some OFRN stuff, and Bobby Love, mixing all three of those together, Kingfish and Art and Zebo, and that blood was prevalent up in that area. You get down into Florida, Georgia, um, Mississippi area. Mississippi with the RC and the Soso Boys, a lot of heavy Finley's Bow blood. Georgia had, with Ronnie Hyde and Crenshaw and Irish Jerry and a lot of different people. They had Carver dogs or Boomerang dogs. Florida, heavy Boomerang, Midnight Cowboy, Shivo stuff. Uh, the New York, they since the breed came in from the north first, in the New England area, you have a lot of the old Kobe Leitner stuff, a lot of the uh, um, Komasinski, and that stuff. Most of it was you could say most of that stuff up there was Colby. You have Colby, Leitner, Donovan. You have Corvino stuff all through Chicago, and with Bozianowski, and that's where some of the, like the Cassius Clay blood that the Divines got. So you have these different bloodlines that are popular in their area or popular amongst the dogmen of the day. They take it, create their own families, and depending on how they breed and how much they competed with them and what kind of standards they have, they either spread out and kept going or they died out. Even the Soros dogs from California and Arizona, and then he went to Florida with that stuff. It's got the, Soros bull, so you got the Black Widow Zeke stuff, you know, mixed with the Corvino dogs, some Boomerang, some Carver stuff in there. He had his own family and they went all over the world too. But again, depending on, you know, what they do with them is going to determine, and how they breed them is going to determine how long they last. Now, in many cases, and I mean many, many cases, it's not that the blood runs out or it dies off. The dogs at some point are either exterminated, confiscated, or the breeders themselves have the dogs destroyed when they die, such as in the case of Bob Wallace or Komasinski. You know, I even had a friend. He used to say back in the day, when I die, my wife or my kids, whoever's alive, they're gonna have. It's gonna be in my will that my dogs are all gonna be destroyed. You know. So you had people like that. They didn't want their blood out. They didn't let their blood out too much while they were alive. Even if they did, their last wish is to have their family of dogs destroyed. They don't want people having them after they're gone. You could say that's selfish. You could say it's wrong. That's their wish. That those are their dogs. They can do whatever they want with them. I can understand it. I can respect it, whether I agree with it or not. That's their choice. And again, what happens to a lot of them, I'm not going to name names because I'm never here to put down dogs or dog guys or people's, reputation or anything like that. But when you heavily inbreed a family of dogs, for whatever reason you do it, that's one of the fastest ways, if not the fastest way, to lose it. There's nothing wrong with inbreeding if it's done properly, but you go too heavy, just like anything else, you're going to lose your foundation. You're going to lose the traits that they're known for. You're going to lose health and vitality and structure, athleticism, all that. Mammals especially are not meant to be heavily inbred like that. Even animals in the wild, outside blood or fresh blood is always introduced into a pack or a pride or a species within the species. You're going to have an outside male come into a lion pride and either take over or sneak and breed some females when the dominant male is not paying attention. Same thing with wolves, coyotes, foxes, predators, mammalian predators anyways. So you need fresh blood every once in a while. And I've always, mentioned to people when that comes up, when do you cross? When do you outcross? When do you know it's time? And my thing was, don't wait till you're losing something to outcross. If you like an outside blood or you like a particular dog that's an outcross or a female, acquire it, breed it, or breed to it, or whatever. Don't wait. If it's something you like, stick it in your family of dogs and see how it works. See if it helps. If it's something that's worked before, if you have the right individuals, a certain cross, there's a good chance that it's going to work for you too. Sometimes it don't, but you'll start seeing consistency when you have standards that you stick to. And they're not just standards this and that, and you have to do this and that. They have to be standards that prove out, that work. And if you do get good results from them, there's no reason why moving forward you wouldn't get good results with the offspring or the progeny later on. So you have certain bloodlines or certain dogs that dominate or are popular, at least, just like the Mayday dogs, they became very popular worldwide. Uh, there's a difference between just being popular and being able to produce. That's what keeps a bloodline going, or people keep sticking to it or keep breeding to it. Not this just that they're available, but they have a production rate and a record to back that up. Now, granted, you know, just because a dog or a bloodline is popular doesn't mean that it's good. It's just available. But even still, the ones that are available, if they're good, if they're prepotent or potent, uh, they'll prove that in your breeding program. In future breedings, they'll prove it in competition. In the past, they did anyways, and that's one reason they were popular. It was whether it was Jeep dogs or Mayday dogs or Eli dogs or Red Boy dogs or Jocko dogs, or going way in the past, Tudor dogs or Colby dogs or Lightner dogs. There has to be something that makes people want to keep going back to it or retaining it in their family of dogs or using it over an extended period of time. Individually, the blood doesn't have to fade out, meaning uh, if Carver had lived into his 80s or 90s, he still would have produced good dogs. For all the years that Tudor was around, he always produced good dogs, and other people like Heinzel and the ones I mentioned, Usselton and Maloney and Mayfield, who used Tudor dogs, got good dogs from that blood. And whether it was a particular family of dogs or concentrating on a certain particular dog, like Boyles did with Dirty Mary, you can keep it going generation after generation after generation. It doesn't have to fade out. But when you get stuck, quote unquote, kennel blind, or you don't want to breed to outside dogs, that's where the downfall comes. And it's happened with a lot of different bloodlines and a lot of different breeders. And a breeder may be able to breed his dogs a certain way, heavily inbred, close line bred, and have success with it. But that doesn't mean that somebody else getting those dogs can do the same thing and have the same success. Because one thing I noticed, like let's say Heinzel, looking at the dogs he had on his yard and seeing litter mates to those dogs in other people's yards, they weren't the same dogs. They weren't the same quality. They didn't have as good a structure or as good as teeth or as good athleticism. So because Heinzel was selective and kept, quote unquote, the best ones for himself, and he knew how to breed dogs, which ones to breed and which ones not to, whereas someone who had Heinzel dogs, maybe they didn't have his expertise, he could keep his dogs going longer, tighter bred than someone else could. The same could be said for Carver or Boudreaux or the people who had Boleo dogs, or even Fletcher Chavis and Bob Rast and them with the Jocko dogs and all that. They know the family of dogs better than anybody else. So they can keep it going longer than somebody else who's not as expertise with that blood could. That's a difference too. Who has them and what are they doing with them? and what kind of time and effort are they spending with them, and what do they know about the dogs. But irregardless of that, anybody, if you continuously inbreed, and I don't care if that's Colby, I can say that about him because he's passed and the family's passed, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. Now, Colby, they could inbreed the dogs for generations and be successful according to what I've been hearing. And I saw some Colby dogs back in the day in competition, right? But any bloodline that that is heavily inbred like that, or scatterbred with no form to function and just throwing a bunch of dogs together, if you do that for an extended period of time, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it because of those two factors where they're heavily inbred and you start losing, you start having a lot of faults, or they're scatterbred and there's no concentration of any traits. It's just all over the place. So either way, you could lose your bloodline, and it'll happen to anybody, no matter how good of a breeder they are, no matter how good their dogs are, and more so with others who are not familiar as the breeder is with his family of dogs. If they get dogs from them, there's a good chance that they'll screw them up even more. With that being said, using all three techniques, outcross, inbred, line bred, whether it's heavy line breeding or close, whether it's 50-50 outcross or 75-25 or 66-33, whatever it is, all those can be used properly to maintain your family of dogs and keep it going. So I would say the number one reason for people losing their family of dogs, or family of dogs fading out if they continue to breed them over a long period of time, is inbreeding. Another one, followed closely behind, scatter breeding. And those are the two main factors, you could say, of why bloodlines are lost. And then you have the other factors too. People get old, they lose the dogs. Dogs get confiscated, dogs get destroyed, they get sick and die, some disease, of hurricane, and all kinds of things could happen why a particular family of dogs is lost. So for those that are interested in breeding, it's imperative that you use as many different techniques while retaining the standards you want and retaining the traits that you want in your family of dogs to be successful and consistent over a period of time. So I hope you like this vid, Mac, and again, thank you for your contribution. And as always, feel free to comment. Thank you.